Typically, when we talk about a student athlete being recruited, we're referring to what he or she does on the field of play. But the student part of it gets forgotten. Not today on Recruiting 101. We're going to bring in John Heck from Hofstra University, Associate Director of Athletics for Compliance. John, the classroom is just as important as how good of an athlete you are in order to be recruited and then ultimately get into college.
You are correct. Every student athlete at the Division I and II level needs to go through the NCAA Eligibility Center, formerly known as the Clearinghouse. The NCAA Eligibility Center exists to certify the academic preparedness of each and every student athlete at the Divisions I and II level. What they need to do in order to become a qualifier, as you said, is they need to register with the Eligibility Center. What they're going to take is your 16 best core courses with a specific breakdown, get a core GPA. That core GPA corresponds to a sliding scale for an SAT or ACT score. At that point, you need to make sure you achieve it. At the Division I level, if you don't achieve it, you're automatically a non-qualifier. If you're deemed a non-qualifier, you cannot receive athletics aid, practice, or compete at the Division I level. Same thing for the Division II level. It's just a different scale in order to become eligible.
So, John, we have people watching all over the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. There are different educational standards. What you're talking about kind of puts everybody on an equal scale so that the NCAA could look at somebody in New Jersey and be able to compare them to somebody in the Bronx.
Correct. Actually, the NCAA Eligibility Center has an approved course list from every single high school that they've gone through and certified. So if the high school needs to change their courses, they can simply just go to the Eligibility Center, have the course list possibly altered depending on their course description, whether the courses are taught at the required level, and that way it helps the kid update it every single year.
Well, John, you've worked with some pretty high-profile athletic teams, Hofstra, Rutgers. I know you can't give any examples, but from your experience, I'm sure you've seen the crisis mode kick in with student athletes who aren't even sure if they're qualified coming into their freshman year of college. How important is it to make sure your ducks are in order and you know how the system works if you think you're a high-level student athlete, or even if you're going to play college sports, to get ready as early as possible?
It's extremely important. Academics are always the most important thing. And as the NCAA stresses, you're a student athlete. Student comes first. And if you fall behind your freshman or sophomore year and that GPA is not as high as it can be, it makes it really hard to catch up. It's real easy to go from an A down to a C average. It's real hard to get that C average back up.
So when do you officially register?
You register after your junior year. And the reason I say not until after your junior year is because it's not required until you go on an official visit or before you're going to be offered an athletically related financial aid agreement.
Explain the difference between a qualifier and a non-qualifier.
A qualifier is someone that meets the academic eligibility requirements. They're eligible to practice, compete, and receive athletic aid. Non-qualifiers cannot practice, cannot compete, and cannot receive athletic aid. The other thing you have to remember is they need to graduate. If you don't graduate high school, you're not going to become a qualifier.
And there is some student athletes who would become a partial qualifier, so that there are some exceptions where you can still play college sports.
You're half correct. Division I does not have a partial qualifier rule, but Division II does. And Division II, when I said the scale is different, they have a GPA you need to hit a minimum for, and they have an SAT you need to hit a minimum for. There is no sliding scale. So if you have a low GPA, you don't need a higher SAT. You just need to achieve certain numbers. And if you achieve one but not the other, you can become a partial qualifier, which means you can receive aid and practice, but you cannot compete.
And that's why it's so important, too, as we're talking, that we're not just focusing on the Division I star basketball player that's going to go on to the NBA. We're talking about the soccer player that may play at the Division II level. There are different rules, and people have to understand that, as you just talked about.
Yeah, correct. And if you're going to a Division III school, I know part of this conversation is with the Eligibility Center, make sure your academics are in line. Division III actually does not have a requirement that you go through the Eligibility Center. So if you know you're going to a Division III school, don't register with the Eligibility Center because it's not necessary.
Well, great information, John, and we certainly know that you will be supplying a lot more of that in the upcoming weeks here on Recruiting 101. John Heck from Hofstra University, the Associate Director of Athletics for Compliance. John, great job as always. And if you want to see more of what John has to offer and more from our experts as well, log on to MSGVarsity.com. We have a whole section dedicated to recruiting. It's called the Recruiting 101 portion of MSGVarsity.com. It's all there. Check it out today. It's now time for the Recruiting 101 Tip of the Week.
In this week's tip, we encourage you to get real. It's time to get an honest assessment of your athletic ability, get a grip on the realities of getting a Division I athletic scholarship. Just because you are the star of your high school team, that doesn't mean that every Division I school has you on their most wanted list or their radar. Consider this. According to the National Federation of High Schools, there are 1,112,000 high school football players in the United States, and less than 1%, 0.89 to be exact, will be offered a Division I scholarship. Let's look at the numbers for the ladies. There are 444,809 girls playing high school basketball, and only 1.09% will be offered a scholarship to play at the Division I level. We're not saying that you should give up on your dream to play for a big-time school. Just remember, many Division II and III schools offer a great athletic opportunity and might be a great fit for you. Consider all of your options to get the best possible college athletic experience.